Hello and welcome to Confronting the Darkness. I'm Rob Jacobs.
And I'm Fr.Bob Bailey. Benvenuto. Ciao. Benvenuto al confrontazione con il scuro.
Very good. I don't know what you said, but it sounded good anyway. Anyway, it's been a few months actually since we've done a show, and that's because you were away in Rome on sabbatical. Lucky you. And we're going to talk about that tonight, some of the things that went on in Rome with Father Bailey. But first, we actually have some questions that were emailed to us from viewers. And the first question we have, the person asks, is there a difference in how you deal with a malevolent human spirit as opposed to a demonic spirit?
And I think we went over that in one of our past.
We probably did.
Yeah. There's a big difference. You know, one is a human spirit, but still you deal with them with the power of Christ. I would use the liberation and treat it as a demonic spirit, even though it's human, it is malevolent.
Right.
So it's probably attached to some demon somehow.
Right. I think we'd come across the theory that they're kind of the foot soldiers for the demonic in some manner. So yeah, I think that's probably the best way. The second question we have is asking if I am properly trained in dealing with something demonic being a layperson. So
hardly. No, I'm only kidding. Yes, and obviously, you know, you're doing a lot of reading and from good sources, not just the internet,
right?
But from good books, and yeah, just by our experiences and our talks and delving into this, yeah, I would say you're well trained.
Why, thank you.
Well,
that's
yeah,
good to know.
Yeah, and I think I don't know why somebody would question that, but
I don't think it's anything personal. I think it was more that being a layperson as opposed to real, clergy. If it's as effective, I would think, in dealing with something demonic.
Well, it's different.
Right.
It's much different a priest than a layperson.
Right.
But but what you're doing as an assistant, and even in some areas when I'm not able to be there, again, it has its effect. Right. It has its effect, absolutely.
And the last question we have, the person asks, when doing a liberation, does it matter if you're dealing with a certain type of demon? And as an example, they ask, a succubus as opposed to a non-sexual demonic spirit? And would there be a difference in procedure? And I think we probably answered that before too, but...
Yeah, I think for our aspect in our ministry that we do, no, there's no difference. We go over after all evil spirits the same way, through prayer, through the name of Jesus, through the sacramentals. We treat them all in the very same way.
Right.
Other people might have other differences, maybe in investigation or whatever, but we handle anything demonic the same way, casting out in the name of the Lord.
Right. So there you go. Those three questions answered as best that we can. And welcome back from Rome. It's so good to have you back.
Thank you. It actually went by really, really fast. It's amazing. It was 2 months. People said that, but in the beginning it looked like, oh, I have all this time, but then you have the classes, and then what happened with the Holy Father in the middle of that, and it just, by the time it started coming towards the middle, it just went really fast. Before you knew it, I was ready to come home on the plane, sadly enough.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned some classes. Now, there were a lot of people that were, I guess, either assuming or thinking you might have been there for exorcism training.
Yeah, the opposite could not be more true. The sabbatical training basically was that after 10 years, in my case it was 20 years because I didn't do it after 10 years and I didn't avail myself of it. You have an opportunity. A sabbatical is a time to take out of your normal priestly ministry and to go to a place and to have like a refresher course. And it's not like seminary in that you have exams and all that, but just on certain subjects. It's also a time for prayer and also to break out of the normal everyday ministry. That's what sabbatical is all about. And so I had 2 months as many other priests have done after that. But it had nothing to do with the demonic, nothing to do with exorcism. As a matter of fact, the Lord made it very clear to me that all of that stuff was being put aside so I could have a time. I mean, we've been going pretty steady.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been a sabbatical if I kept working on that. So it was for my own personal priesthood, my own renewal of my faith and renewal of my ministry, and that's what it was. And some courses that were interesting, but not heavy.
Yeah, well, I think it was probably needed too. I mean,
Absolutely.
like you said, we had quite a bit going on, and you needed to get rejuvenated.
Yeah, yeah.
And you pointed out that briefly you were there at a very historic time. You couldn't have picked a better time to go to Rome. That
Yeah.
just kind of fell into place.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'd like to, the day that I got there, Pope Benedict was all over the news. I couldn't understand really why, till I got to the hotel room, put the BBC on at that point, because I was spending a few days in a hotel before I went to the Institute. And then they announced that he was resigning, which took us all by surprise.
Right.
And I went, holy cow, what, I'm never at the right place at the right time, but I cannot believe I'm here. It was surreal. It was like, oh my gosh, and I'm going to be at the Institute right there, right in the Vatican, during this time. And so what happened was we were there for the whole transition. When Pope Benedict had his last Wednesday audience, we were there. When he had his last Sunday blessing, we were there. As he left, which was very emotional for us because I really grew more to love Pope Benedict even more when I was in Rome because he was honest enough to say, I can no longer do this. His humility, he wasn't thinking of himself. He knew other people would criticize him.
Right.
But he stepped down, and because of his humility, God gave us a gift of this new Pope Francis, which I'll talk about a little more. And so we really got attached to him, and we were there when this helicopter took off. They went right over where we were on the hill, and of course we were there for the election. Now I'd like to see if we could put the first picture on. It was a historical picture. There I am. I'm in St. Peter's Square. Now that was a Wednesday, I believe. I believe it was Wednesday. Now we had gone, and of course the day before was black smoke. It was pouring that day, and some guys didn't want to go down, but we said, we're in Rome. We're right down the hill from the Vatican, up the hill from the Vatican. Let's be in the crowd for this history. Our plan that night was to go down, wait for the black smoke, and go out for dinner. We never did, because as you can see in the next picture that will come up, there's the white smoke that came out of the stack. At first, it looked really dark, and then all of a sudden, people went, oh, and we looked, and it's like, then it became very white.
Wow.
And everybody was dumbfounded that this could have happened so soon. So, the sense that we got is like, oh my gosh, we are in history right now. And then after that, they elected the name, George Mario Bergoglio, which none of us heard about. I thought he was an Italian at first, but he came from Argentina, and we really, there with him when he first came out, and he stood there. Then he asked us to pray for him. In the very beginning, from the very, very beginning, he did not stand on a platform to put himself higher as was always done because he's the Holy Father.
Right.
He at the same level as the cardinals. He came out, asked us to pray for him. He invoked the Blessed Virgin Mary, which again just set my heart on love for him. And we knew this was going to be a different pope, a different course. And when he named himself Francis, again, after St. Francis of Assisi, it was surreal for us. And if you put on picture 3, there he is on the day of the inauguration when he became, inaugurated as the Holy Father. We had the blessing. They needed priests to give out communion, so there we were, helping with communion. What an awesome privilege it was to give out communion. There he was. He came right out. We were close to where he was. You put the next one on, and there he is, our beautiful Pope Francis. So again, it was something surreal.
And he was really, they picked him very quickly.
They did. They did. In retrospect, we were making bets, and we thought either Thursday or Friday. We had no thought that it was going to be Wednesday. But I think the Cardinals going in really knew they wanted a pope of reform, a pope to go out that had to carry the burden, had to deal with evil.
Yeah.
Not only outside, but also some evil that was going on within. And they pretty much knew, they were in unity, which was beautiful.
Wow. And you had actually met some priests there who, well, I don't know if you want to hop to that yet, but yeah, some of the priests that you met there actually shared the belief in the spiritual warfare.
Yeah, I had a sense when I was going in prayer and prophecy that I would meet other like-minded priests. And I went on a trip with one of them, with three of them rather, and we went to the shrine of St. Maria Goretti, which is my parish that I'm pastor of. We went there to see she's incorrupt, her body is incorrupt. We went there to pray. And then because we were priests, they showed us relics of Maria Goretti and other saints in the form of a cross, and they were available. Well, I already have one of those, but the guys were saying, oh my gosh, we could use this for deliverance. And I went, deliverance? And we become friends, but we hadn't broached that whole subject yet. And that's when we told, their belief, they had the blessed oil, they were going through warfare. I prayed over one of them, and so we began talking about spiritual warfare. And so I wanted to give a big shout out to my buddies, and I know within time that they'll also be able to help within the network, to Father Brian and Father Tom from Illinois and Father Ernie from New Jersey. Wonderful, good, holy, solid priests. And I know that our bond will be there for a long time, and they'll be great warriors also.
Yeah, that's great.
So that, but the other thing that was most amazing was from almost the very beginning of Pope Francis's pontificate, he had been talking about the devil and about evil right from the get-go. And that was another thing that was like, oh my gosh, he's dealing with this head on. And I wanted to take some excerpts from some of what he said, because this is important. As a leader, as the major Christian denomination, in the world, in the Catholic Church, for him to be speaking so boldly and so frequently about the devil is really setting a course that Pope Benedict actually began, because it was Pope Benedict that asked for an exorcist in every diocese. And I will tell you this, if you're familiar with Father Gabriel Amorth, he sent a message to Pope Francis, and it was a warning to take care because there would be enemies, and that if he was going to continue the route he was going, to be careful about the enemies that would look for his demise. Wow. So, and I wonder if Pope Francis really took that to heart. I can only say probably.
Hopefully.
And why he was dealing with the problem of the devil and evil. But this is what he said. The first homily he gave were to the cardinals that elected him in the Sistine Chapel. And he said to them and them to us, whoever does not pray to God, prays to the devil. Whoever does not praise God, prays to God, prays to the devil. When one does not profess Christ, one professes the worldliness of the devil. And so if you have Christians who don't pray, if you have believers who don't pray, then you might as well be praying to the devil, because you're not, you're not worshiping God, And it was bold, Again, because what happens is if you don't pray, then all that worldliness that's part of Satan's domain will infect you. And so, amazing. And then on April 15th, he was saying Mass in the place. Again, as you know, he did not go into the papal apartments. He stayed in this house, this guest house right next to St. Peter's, because he felt that was adequate for him. He's a man of humble humility and embracing poverty. He said, Pope Francis warned that this is another a trick of the devil is called calumny, and that's speaking ill of others. And that's something we all fall into as a human trait.
Yeah.
We all do it. But Pope Francis says this is worse than sin, and it's a direct expression of Satan. And boy, do we need that in the paranormal world. You know, I've never seen so much backbiting as people involved, with groups involved in the paranormal. I mean, they're fighting, they're this, they're that. Well, groups are splitting off and all of this. And, you know, it's a word for us, too. Because worse than sin is calumny. Because it is an expression of Satan. He said, we're all sinners, all of us. We all commit sins, but calumny is something else. It is, of course, a sin too, but it's something more, because it aims to destroy the work of God. Calumny comes from a very evil thing. It is born of hatred, and hate is a work of Satan. Amazing. Hitting right on the pulling, no punches. I mean, he's just amazing. He's dealing with warfare.
And it's such a powerful statement. It really is.
It is, because we all need to hear that.
Yeah.
All of us. You, I, everybody needs to hear this. And then the commentator said, which is true, since his election, the Pope has also made frequent references to the devil. Observers have noted this emphasis with interest, especially as explicit mentions of the devil largely fell into disuse in the years following the Second Vatican Council, which was in the 60s, when, you know, the pop psychology, all that was up, and they kind of, the spiritual life was kind of put in the back burner. And so he said, even in the church, there was a disappearance of the devil from church texts, and exorcists complain that the rite of exorcism you know, needed to be done, but that was kind of, you know, like kind of downplayed by many in the church, not by the hierarchy of the Holy Father. But Pope Francis's frequent allusions to Satan and the evil one may well be a part of an effort, one, as I said, that Pope Benedict XVI had already begun, to cast out the presence of evil, so to bring back healing and harmony to the church, and parts of the Vatican in particular. Many believe that within even the walls there, that there is, you know, that Satan is alive and well, and I happen to believe that. Yeah. As with anything, you know, there's good and evil everywhere. And so, again, how beautiful, beautiful this teaching. And for those of us who are in the paranormal, particularly in spiritual warfare, how welcome these words are by the major leader of the Christian church. Now, on May 4th, Pope Francis, in a special sermon at his 7 a.m. Mass, said this. He said that we must always remain meek and humble, that we might defeat the empty promises and the hatred of the world. Okay? Meekness and humility, we always can use that. I think when we start getting full of pride and thinking we're all it, our ministry is all it, our group is all it, we have all the answers, we're better than that one, this is where the devil comes in. Yeah. And so meekness and humility. He said, the way of the Christian is the way of Jesus. In other words, living out the gospel. If we want to be followers of Jesus, there is no other way than that which indicates to us. And one of the consequences of this is hatred of the world, but also of the prince of this world. He uses it, the prince of this world, which is from the words of Jesus. Again, we have to hate the prince of this world and anything that is associated with that. That's pride and greed and you know, self-absorption. We have to hate that because it comes from his kingdom. The origin of hate, he said, is this, that we are saved, but it is that prince, the prince of this world, the devil, who does not want that we should be saved. And so he hates. Pope Francis went on to say, something very, I think, shocking for people who read it. Not for us, but for people who read it. He said, there can be no dialogue with the prince of this world. How many times have we said, when you go in, you're dealing with demonic spirit, you don't dialogue.
Exactly.
But he said, there is no dialogue with the prince of this world. He said, though dialogue is always necessary with other human beings, not with the prince of this world. He said, let this be clear. Today, dialogue is necessary among humans. It is necessary for peace. Dialogue is a habit. It's an attitude that we must have among us to feel and understand each other. And that dialogue must be maintained forever. True dialogue comes from charity, from love. But with that prince, the prince of the world, it is impossible to dialogue. One can only respond with the word of God who defends us. And just as he did with Jesus, so he will try to do with us. And that is to destroy the work of God that we're about. And then he went on to describe how the devil tempts people, even putting words into the mouth of the tempter, the one who attempts to deceive men and women. The devil will say, only look, just do this one small little scam. It is a small matter, nothing really. And so he begins to lead us on the road that's slightly off. It begins with the little things, little kink in the armor. This is a pious lie, Pope Francis said. And he again cited the devil. Do it, do it. There is no problem. It begins little by little. It always begins little by little. That's how he gets in there. Little kinks in the armor. He went on to say that the Lord asks us to remain sheep with Christ as the good shepherd. And then lastly, he gave us the example and asked us, especially as Catholics, to turn to the Virgin Mary, because she is one who lived wrapped in meekness and humility. And she can show us, she who is hated so much by Satan because she was a human being who said yes to God's plan in humility, can show us the way to humility and meekness. So this is some of the things that Pope Francis has been talking, and I think he's going to be a powerful leader for us in emphasizing and encouraging us to fight the fight against evil in the world.
And I want to thank you too for sharing those teachings. And I think it's important that people actually have access to be able to read the teachings.
Right. Now, one other thing that I want to mention quickly too is one of the places I got to go, I read on the internet, is a Purgatory Museum. It's a church. It's called the Sacred Heart, the Church of Chiesa di Sacro Cuore al Suffragio, and in there are mementos of how souls in purgatory have tried to make themselves known because they've asked for prayers. And so I'm going to give you a few examples in the pictures to show you how things have popped up that people have had. Fingerprints burnt onto prayer books. That's one of them there. Another one, again, they've made their, we know how sometimes in the paranormal world, the ghosts, they want themselves known.
Right.
Not because they're being mean, but rather because they're trying to get our attention. Well, this was the same thing. They were getting the attention of the people that they needed prayers.
That's
and
amazing.
So and they had this all over this museum.
Wow.
And I thought that would be great for our listeners because of the fact that it's, paranormal related. Yeah. And again, sometimes the spirits that we encounter need our prayers to be able to go to the light,
Yeah, that's very important to know. That's just amazing. I mean, how do you burn a handprint like that?
Yeah, in different things like that.
Exactly.
So that was one of the, she said, actually, one of my friends, Father Tom, said, I want to go to this church. I said, yeah, I did too. So we both went there. Pouring rain, thundering and lightning with umbrellas, but we went anyways. So, and then there's the final one again. It's an actual garment that was, the handprint was burnt on.
Yeah, it really is amazing. That I mean, that they would be able to actually break through to do that, to be known.
Right.
You know,
not to scare people, but to
No.
make their things. We need prayer.
Yeah.
We need prayer. So.
We also wanted to talk about, I could listen about what happened in Rome
Wow.
all day. We do have a couple of things to touch on. The state of the PWSM ministry and the network now.
Right. What we're going to be developing in the months ahead, now that we're back and we're both meeting, is how we can best serve all of you through this ministry. Because truth to be known, it's very slow in the network itself. We don't have priests and ministers in every area who are properly trained, be able to do that. You know, we do have groups that are open to investigating evil, but not all of them feel they can do the spiritual battle. So we're going to be trying to work for PWSM, since I cannot, be everywhere. I cannot really travel that much anymore. I'm going to be taking a new assignment as a new pastor in another parish, so I'll be transferring to another parish, which a bunch of us are doing in July. So we want to use the best we can of the media in order to facilitate a center of education on spiritual warfare, to have the names of books available, to have training videos, to have training DVDs, to have the materials so that you, whether you're a group or whether you are an individual, calls for help. Well, if there is no priest or minister around, then we can have a service, a prayer ritual for you to help bless your house. Now, in Catholic tradition, people have always blessed their home with holy water. So it's a different blessing, but it's effective. So we're going to be trying to have a way of being more of using the technology that we have to help people, since we cannot be everywhere, and the network just isn't growing as it is growing. I mean, it's grown a lot, but we're not everywhere.
Right.
So with that, we'll be talking more about that.
Yeah.
And we're excited about it. It's something that that can help.
Yeah, I mean, still more tweaking to be done, and it will grow.
Always.
And I wish we could have talked about it a little bit more, but we're actually up against the clock. Half hour, again, goes by pretty quick. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in and watching. It's so great to have Father Bailey back.
It's good to be back.
And of course, now that he's back, we're going to have more episodes coming. While he was away, it was a little difficult. So with that, we're going to say good night. And remember, when confronting the darkness,
put on the whole armor of God.
With the sword of St. Michael.
God bless you.
God bless.